Every man knows that his pride is his greatest gift and his greatest weapon. Why do I say gift and why do I say weapon? Because a weapon can be turned against yourself. You know, men commit suicide with guns every day and then say, they bought it for the sake of self protection. That same self protection really turned into self destruction. Our pride, our egos, can be our greatest weapons and our greatest gifts. Which leads me back to the saying of man was made to be humbled, not humble. A lot of times we get too ahead of ourselves, right? We allowed our pride to blind us from things that maybe, may be apparent to other people that are going to fuck us up. But our delusion and our self-aggrandizement keeps us, from seeing certain things. And I want to propose today that there's two postures to a man's pride. A man who's overly arrogant, who's loud, who's boastful, he's really insecure. This is the most obvious one. This is the image that society demonizes today, that shows that this is not what masculinity is. This is fake masculinity, which is true. I do agree with that. But as men, we overcompensate. A lot of us overcompensate. And what does that lead to? This shaming of this figure of a man being, authoritative has been taken way out of proportion. If a man walks in his authority now, he's called controlling, manipulative, misogynistic, and it leads to this very horrible, disgusting version of pride, which is the fake humility man. The fake humility man is a man who is down to earth. He's a great man. He's good in his heart. And he's pure from the outside looking in. But on the inside, he may be deeply insecure. And it's not because he's not good enough, but rather it's because he lies to himself and keeps himself feeling safe. And he can feel the double mindedness. He sees authority as something that is, gonna bring tension, that is gonna bring strife, that is gonna really attack his image of what masculinity is supposed to be, which is safety rather than warmth and love. A man has to be loving. What does that mean? He has to be able to tell the truth at all times to himself, so that way he could lead his people effectively, so he could lead his circle effectively, so he could be honest with his brothers when they're fucking up, when he could show them love and show them support when they're doing great. Both bring safety, presence, warmth, and ultimately love. When we reflect on the scriptures, the Most High is a God of love, and something the scriptures touch on is that if the Most High chastises you, you are loved. So all of you guys that are fighting and wondering why God or why the universe doesn't allow me to get certain things, quite frankly, you might not be able to receive them. You might not be able to handle them. Of course, that's going to hurt our pride. The first side which I presented, the one that is always going to believe he could handle everything. But then there's the other side of us, the fake humble guy, right? Who he poses to be humble, to keep himself safe, to keep himself, small. And the reason I say there's two sides to a man's pride is because that second one is prideful in action. The scripture says a false balance is an abomination to the Lord. He's walking unbalanced. He's overcompensating for the lack of pride that he shows. Pride in the gifts that the Most High has given him. Pride in who he's meant to be. That is a lack of gratitude. That is ungratefulness. This revelation came to me when I went through my own identity collapse. During that whole season of while my identity was collapsing, I used to say, I'm a man of faith. What is going on? Why am I allowing myself to play small? Why am I acting like a bitch? Why am I allowing people to push me over? Because that was the reality of it. I was a huge pushover. I was a nice guy. And I knew it. And I knew better too. But I kept lying to myself because it was an attack of who I am or who I was this man who seen himself as humble. And my fear was if I allowed my pride to show, I would become this arrogant asshole that forsaked his God, that became a asshole to people because I've also lived the first one where I was boastful, where I was arrogant, where I walked the thin line between confidence and arrogance. I've lived both sides of pride. The first one felt powerful, but it was loud, it was insecure. If I were to see it now in someone else, I could recognize it instantly. It's comparative, it's envious. But the great thing about him is that he's honest with himself. He's honest with himself to an extent. And what I mean by that is that his self-belief is true, but his arrogancy is what gets him caught up. Now, the second guy, he has the self-belief, but his self-belief is most likely fractured. He knows he's capable more. He knows he's better, but because he's attached to this identity of being the fake humble guy, he keeps himself small. I went through the same thing after my identity collapse. Because what I first perceived was I had a huge ego. I allowed my ego to make me controlling, manipulative, when in reality was I was just misaligned. And I took my authority as a man as something that was overbearing. And I allowed the people around me, I allowed social media to really bring me down as an authority as a man because I was a man who had high standards. And instead of understanding that not everyone could receive me because of my high standards, I turned within and lowered my standards. And that's exactly what caused my entire identity collapse. So I went from the first side of pride to the second side of pride within a season. And the second side of pride has led me to where I am now, the most balanced, where I still have the self belief, but I allow myself to go into flow state. I allow the Lord to give and to take, which is a much more powerful posture to be in because now you're humbled while being exalted. Because you know what the scripture says, he who exalts himself shall be abased, he who abases himself shall be exalted, which is saying that if you allow yourself to see yourself so great, so above everybody else, your ass is going to get humbled. But if you allow yourself to be humble, which is not ignoring your gifts or ignoring the power that's been given to you, but actually accepting them, because like I said, ignoring your gifts is a sign of ungratefulness. It's a sign of fear, a fear of who you're meant to be, a fear of the gifts that you've been given. That is pride. Because your pride is keeping you attached to the fake character that you're playing. And that breeds envy, that breeds contention, that breeds resentment, it breeds confusion. Now, let's touch on the guy that I am now, the man that I am now, the third option. I never wanted to be disciplined. I wanted to trust myself. I wanted to lead myself because I am a leader. And that's the way I've always seen myself. Both guys, more oftentimes than not, the second version is the leader, because the first guy is so over in his head, he cannot see the best for others. He does not allow himself to see what's good for others. He only allows himself to see what's good for himself. So if you find yourself on either side of pride, You have to ask yourself, how do I become more balanced as a man? And balance is different for everybody. I don't believe balance is something that there's a one case fits all, honestly. And that's something I learned a while back. My version of balance is 13-hour work days, and I love doing that shit. 8 at the plantation, the job, and then another 5 to 6 after work. That's fine with me because I love to grow as a man. I'm someone who loves himself, and I show that by growth, by making sure I'm developing myself, being kind to myself, you know? And, you know, pride really too, if you're spiritual against God, is really not allowing him to give you what he needs to give you, or not allowing yourself to really see what he's trying to do for you. That's another form of pride. So pride comes in many forms, but I wanted to pose the two sides of pride today. We have to have both, but we have to, it's like a percentage capacity percentages. Sometimes we gotta be a 70 and more on the egotistical side. Sometimes we gotta just be more humble in a situation to avoid bullshit. But above all, we have to be honest with ourselves. We have to be honest with who we are and what gifts we have. Because the most selfish thing you could do as a man is withhold everything that's been given to you and call it faith.